So it's 8:04, and the regular meeting of the Public Works Subcommittee of the RTM is called to order. Thank you all.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yes,
I'm
the
assuming I
gentleman
don't see
was
any
here
lights on.
turning it on.
Yeah, we met him earlier.
Oh, we've been on for a while.
Probably.
Captured your whole side conversation.
Probably.
Our foci was shot.
Yeah. And who's on the clock? Actually, Mr. Edelman made the note that the warning that I posted had the bulk of the budget items that are going to be considered at the RTM on May 8th on our agenda, in addition to our items. That was somewhat unintentional. I didn't know which items to put on that we were going to be voting on specifically, so I did a cut and paste. And so I don't know if we feel we need to modify the agenda to reflect just the items that we're going to take action on here. I guess to do that, we'd have to identify which ones we're actually going to take action on, which is going to be the selectmen operating budget we're going to comment on. And then I think all of the items that are under appropriations, the Rules Committee's asked me to make some comments about as far as how they function.
Okay, but we're not going to comment on the education operating budget, for example.
Probably not. So I'd suggest then that we strike from the agenda the education operating budget. Let's see.
And you'll make the modifications on
Yeah,
that?
now I'll just scratch it on here.
Yep.
Any thought?
Do we need to vote on it?
Well, my
we
only
need
question
to
is
accept the
we're
agenda.
meeting as the Public Works Committee.
We are to comment on usually what historically I've seen this committee do, and when I was here, we commented as whether or not we were in support of the public works items related to the operating budget, the sewer items, the parking, and that goes for operating and capital.
Capital expenditure, yeah.
Did I say sewer? That's usually the ones we comment on here.
Yes, sir.
So how to whittle that down here? I have no problem leaving operating budget on, but we're only going to be debating and voting on those items in the operating. So we'll leave that on. I'll strike education.
Okay.
And then the operating funds and the capital funds related to sewer and parking are on there. And then with regard to the refunding, I don't think we need that on, of the town bonds. So I'll give you this, but I struck education, town bonds, and up at the top, unassigned balances. I don't know if we need to vote on that either. But any thoughts on that one? I don't think so.
It's not public works.
No. Yep, okay. So those three items struck.
Do you want under the other appropriations from the bottom one, from recreation fund?
Yep,
program
that
fund?
one out, that should be out as well. Okay, so we struck 23-13, we struck education, and we struck recreation program fund under other appropriations, and we struck 23-15, and I can give you this. Do I have a
So
motion?
I'd like to move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Frank.
Here
Frank with the
to
motion.
I'll second.
Ian with the
Who
second.
seconded? Ian?
Ian with the second. All in
Favor
favor?
with us?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Frank, for the heads up.
I was just getting worried.
I didn't miss
at the
anything, though, did I?
No, you
Yeah,
didn't.
it could have been a very long meeting.
I was getting worried about the length of the meeting. I was
Yeah.
like, this is more than we need to.
You must have an early pick in the draft.
No, I'm sorry, there's an important hockey game underway in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay. so-
Here, I always thought you were worried about Pat's wrist running out as he writes it all out.
So, very good. Second item is, I did this time circulate the minutes to the previous meeting. I sent them shortly after the last meeting. Are there any comments or questions? Does anybody need a copy to refresh their recollection?
I was not in attendance.
I was not in attendance either.
Right, and
I'm sure it was fine.
yeah. Just because you weren't in attendance, I've always understood, doesn't mean you don't have, you can't vote, you don't have to vote. Are there any edits? No? I'll take a motion then to read a page to approve the minutes as drafted. Rolf on a second. All in favor? Okay, any abstentions? You got one abstention, Frank. Any noes? Were you a yes or a no? I didn't say.
Oh, sorry, I was yes.
Okay, so.
I wrote him, I hope I'm yes.
One abstention.
Object to myself.
Checked in the minutes I wrote.
Vote shouldn't count.
All right, very good. The next item is to discuss those items that we are going to discuss.
Who seconded that?
Ralph.
Rolf did.
Yep, all right.
So the next item is to go over those items with regard to the budget. I put together a few comments. I'm going to try really hard not to repeat what we covered 2 meetings ago and focus on conclusions or summary items from the budget, and then items that did get changed by the Board of Selectmen and by the Board of Finance in their meeting. Please, anyone chime in if I miss anything or misstate anything. I'm going to pull my budget up here right now. But high level, the Board of Selectmen operating budget is up 8.45%. You can see a breakdown, those of you who have computers or want to check at home, on page 5. The town operating budget is up 3.78%, or $1.23 million. The trend line I observed was in line with recent years. I think recent goes back 3. I don't think it goes back 4, in what I was looking at. While town operations were up 3.78, debt service stuck out is up 24.73%, or $2.57 million. And then the bottom line on what the Board of Finance summarizes, total taxes raised are going up 3.34%.
Mark, just remind us, the reason the debt service is up is presumably because debt is up.
Debt is up.
And that's because, the debt is up because of the 3-school project?
And the Great Island.
Great Island.
And have we already bonded the Great Island?
Not completely.
So, sorry, we're looking forward, we're not looking back, so this is
So
our
this is
projection
fact-
for next
this is-
year.
yes, it's-
We're
it's
projecting
in
that we will be charging that for the full year.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my
Yep,
head on
no,
straight.
you're spot on. Town operations, for those not familiar, constitute approximately 20% of the overall town budget. For a full breakdown, you can see page 6, big chunk of that, I think 69% or so.
The other 80 schools?
No, 69 is education, you've got debt in there, and you've got some other stuff.
Okay.
But, so operations, which is what Public Works falls under,
Right.
constitutes 20, and when we get to it, we'll talk about how big a
Got it.
slice Public Works is of that. The approved mill rate is 17.62%, that's up 30.39 mils, or 2.26%. And that also looks like it's been steady going back as far as the rate of increase on that mill rate, going back to 2021. That doesn't take into account changes in the grand list. I'm kind of keeping this
Mhm.
kind of basic. The reserve for capital non-recurring expenditures, that is an account by how the town accounts for long-term capital projects. What's done is it's a multi-year fund, so it's not tied to appropriations and those appropriations lapsing if something doesn't get a cost incurred and paid for by the end of the year. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Primarily what you have going in there are items that are greater than $5 million, and generally items that have greater than a 2-year useful life. And so what typically what's going into that, what's supposed to be going into that, is the department heads are supposed to be keeping track of a current year plus 5-year forecast, a rolling 6-year forecast, and the items that get considered to be funded out of this account are those types of items. This year, capital expenditures total $4.667 million. And of that, there's a breakdown, which I'll pull up on page 15. About $250,000 of that's going to be funded out of this reserve for non-recurring expenditures. Let me find it, page give a sense of where the rest is coming from. You have that, Rolf?
No.
I'll get there. Here we go. Okay, so, yeah, the Board of Finance approved total capital expenditures, $2.466 million. Of that, 1.77 will be funded from taxes, 2.64 is listed as other. I have to find out where it's coming from, and 259,000 is coming out of this reserve for non-recurring revenues.
There you go.
Is that the budget?
The old-fashioned way, eh?
Today's paper.
There we go. We're going old school.
So funny, I almost brought that too.
Vincent pulls out the.
With the large font. So we all-
The large.
I need that font.
Old school.
There we go.
The room spun around and we were in 1957.
Feeling good.
All right, so then, and some of what I'm about to go over is some of the comments I'm going to use when we address the RTM on the budget night, May 8th, I think it is, to try to explain what some of these funds are. But the sewer fund is for the sewer operations, and the sewer's capital funds are funds used to account for activities related to, you guys know this, operations, maintenance, and improvement of the sewer system. Appropriations of this fund are used to maintain, is it 80+ miles of sewers? I think there's 14 pump stations, and let's see, intake facility. Does anyone know where we are in the program as far as replacing the motors? I know that program started way back when I was here the first time in the pump
So
station.
that sequence of pump replacements is done.
Is it done?
Yeah, they were doing 2 year for 3 years in the major pump houses.
Okay.
Those have been done.
Okay.
I mean, there are long-term concerns about the lifespan of certain.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to go too deep, but.
No, well, don't go too deep into that, no, but, however, that was my understanding, which is why I asked the question, but I did see, and I didn't hear any discussion about this, that the budget does reflect in the sewer capital fund replacement of pumps in sewer pump houses. And I'm wondering, are they coming back around again, or is that maybe just a miss?
It's not the ones that were recently replaced.
Yeah.
I think the ones that were replaced 4 or 5 years ago were in like the major pump houses, and there are many other, as you know, smaller pumping facilities across the system.
Okay. All right.
I'm looking at Rolf, and Rolf's nodding, so I'm confident that I'm at least 2/3 right.
Okay, so the budget reflects a 4% increase in fees to be paid and a 5.4% increase overall. On the parking funds, just to recap, are used for the operation and maintenance and capital improvements of the various parking facilities. These are the state parking facilities, I think on state property, Darien and the Road Heights Railroad stations, Mechanic Street. Is that the one across from Darien? Which one is that?
Yeah,
Right?
behind the
Okay.
pizza place and firehouse.
Yep, okay. And all the revenues to support that come from parking permit, daily fees, presumably tickets. I don't know if tickets go there or not, I think they do.
They do.
And so this current budget assumes an increase in daily fees and permits reflective of increasing traffic at the stations. Anyone who commutes, I'm seeing it.
Yep.
So there's an increase projected in there. Let's see. And it also includes the addition of the parking ranger. We talked about the parking ranger, I think, 2 meetings ago. That did get through Board of Selectmen and through Board of Finance. So the cost of that parking ranger, $59,000, $60,000, is borne by, well, he supports the operations and maintenance of the parking facilities and is borne by that operating fund. I believe what that's doing is that's going to free up at the margin, or at least to some extent, Ed's people who were filling in when we were, for the period of time we were down 1 ranger. And I mention that because
Where's the hat?
Lone Ranger
Right,
music in the
rides a
background, yeah. I mention that because when we get to the summary of the numbers on the budget, I I didn't realize, but I went back 6 years, and I could be mistaken, I don't see an FTE increase in Public Works going back 5 or 6 years.
It's 29.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't change. There was up and down. There was looks like a reduction of a part-time seasonal employee, but the FTEs have been flat. I'm gonna, if you all think it makes sense, I'm gonna comment to that. That to me is impressive, that the level of service has been maintained or improved as a
No,
continuum
flat.
over.
Going forward, though, I imagine with Great Island, that will need to increase, I would guess.
We would
There's no
guess.
projected increase
I-
in the current.
I was just gonna say, I didn't see anything in the budget that says specifically Public Works and a relation to anything going on at Great Island.
You know, I wouldn't expect that, Eric, actually. I mean, we're gonna have clearly projects on Great Island that we're gonna have to manage, but we're gonna hire consultants to assess the need for roads, we're gonna hire builders to pave the roads. I mean, we're not gonna have people actually digging trenches or anything like that.
No, I get that, but I think at some point, there's more roads to maintain, there's more grounds to maintain. I don't know if some of that would fall into Parks and Rec, or if some of that would fall into.
I could see
Public
Parks and
Works.
Rec needing a couple of people because Great Island, the former owners, I guess still the current owners, they have a groundskeeping staff there that is not zero. And
Right.
so if they needed, I don't know, 3 heads to maintain the property, then we presumably need 3 heads to maintain the property.
Right, but even at the beaches, you have Parks and Rec staff there, but I would assume that there's,
And you've got private staff there too,
okay.
the guard.
Right.
I think those are contract
Right.
employees.
But just the added land and space, I think, would entail having more Public Works there to do whatever it is.
You would expect there'd be,
Yeah.
or do you retain, for instance, Frank mentioned the landscaping staff. Do you retain them temporarily until you figure out what you're
Yeah.
doing? They know, I don't know.
I mean, more roads.
To be
plow.
determined, to be determined. More roads to be plowed.
Yeah, but in scale to the rest of the town, it's not that much.
Yeah, it's like a,
I mean, we're talking,
It's like one
If
road.
it's one
yeah, it's
mile.
one road. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not that many acres. I mean,
it's not,
But at the margin, you're probably, there's probably something there. Where are we up to? So we were on the parking, we talked about the parking ranger, we talked about revenues going up because there is in the budget improvements to to the parking lots. Mentioned as paving and drainage. I believe the drainage is ultimately gonna be that in the Road Heights.
Yeah.
The culvert, not culvert, I don't use that word.
Okay.
Be careful.
That'll come up
Be-
later.
Yeah, be careful.
The retention chamber. Okay, and now to talk specifically about the operating budget overall for Public Works. The revenues are up $400,000, and that jumps off the page when you look at it, given the whole budget is, give me one moment to get to that page. On the iPad, there's no way to jump. It's not finding it. There we go.
you just say, assume,
I don't like
does
the
that work?
never failed me, but I use an Android.
Yeah, there's a line there,
Yeah.
intergovernmental.
Yeah, which page you're on there?
Well,
Doesn't have
It's
a
down to
page
the
number.
number at the bottom, right?
yeah, I numbered it myself from what I put together.
Okay, I'll-
I have it as
Six.
page 6, but
Yeah, what's the line item while I look for it? It's 400,000, it's 300 and...
337, 664.
Right. So what I understand that is it's not an increase in revenues. That's related to this state town aid road grant, which was previously budgeted as a direct revenue item into the reserve for non-recurring expenditures. And that's how paving in the past, or at least most recent year was supported. I don't know if it was that way going back a bunch of years, but at least in the reference period, that's how it was handled. And I guess it was explained at the Board of Finance meeting on the budget, that using the grant for paving, especially projects of this size, has the potential for challenges related to grant compliance issues. I think relating to bidding out projects. And so the grant program allows for the town to use this grant, not for capital projects, but not only for capital projects, but also for road operating expenses. So they're gonna use it for road operating expenses and recharacterize this, this revenue item to make up for the lost revenue to Public Works. So I jotted down here 337,000, is that the number you're seeing now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you see a $400,000 increase in revenues, 337 of it is that item. There's also an uplift in licenses and permits, a budget of 12,000. That's the other item that is meaningful. The rest of it, I didn't see anything that stuck out as a big increase, at least on the, which section of the budget is that? That's the, yeah, there are a couple other increases I'm going to touch on, but those are the big ones that caught my eye. Did anyone have any other, on the revenue side, items that caught their attention?
No, just that the fees that were voted on to be increased in for solid waste were, so all of the fee increases that have been put together that we voted on over the past year are all rolled into the budget, and they're clear.
Yep. So when we get to waste management, we'll tackle it right now. I think there's a $38,000 increase in disposal costs, and that's for the increased
Tipping fees?
No,
that's the cost. That's just more use. I don't know if there's an increase in the cost to dispose, because we're under a contract, aren't we?
Right.
So I think that's just an increase in projected or realized increase in usage. And then there's
The contract is ending, so maybe it's
Yeah,
the
but
thought that it's going to be more.
So that contract ends June of '24.
Mm-hmm.
And so that increase isn't
Right.
reflected here.
Okay.
It'll be.
A year from now,
We're gonna see
be
it
looking
there.
at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll wait to see what that is. And then there's an increase to what you're speaking to on the revenue side from the higher rates. We've not seen much of a fall off, it appears, on the inbound. And some of the discussion at the Board of Finance meetings was around this topic specifically. I guess we're paying currently around $99 to dump, and we're charging $119 on the inbound. That'll change, but that's the differential right now. And Ed made the comment when asked, there's not much of a drop-off in volume. Has something to do, he thinks, with the fact that Stanford started closing earlier. And
Yeah,
we're-
so our fees went up.
But
People went away for like a week, and then they came back.
Right.
So, and Stanford, we closed later than Stanford, so later in the day it gets, people just have to offload it that day, so.
Mhm.
So on the revenue side, those were the items that I thought warranted a mention here and probably warrant a more concise mention at the RTM. Yep.
So the Board of Finance is the group that inserted into this Board of Finance approved budget this $337,000.
No, it was in the selectmen's proposal.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
it came from
okay.
Jen. The Board of Selectmen and the
Yep.
head of finance made that shift in order to minimize the compliance. So it went, and it's been unchanged through the process.
Yep.
Okay.
There was a debate, there was a discussion at the Board of Finance. I missed it. I mean, I think it was mentioned, but there wasn't as much discussion. Were you there? I don't remember it being discussed
Yep.
at the Board of Selectmen. On the expense side, I won't restate what I already stated about the FTEs. They're flat. There was a reduction in a seasonal employee. We touched on some of the items that were material changes from prior years. Anything I wanted to add here? the Board of Finance did reduce, we can note on that, did reduce the ice control, 13,400. It was one of the few items that got discussed, right? The reason is somewhat obvious. Ed has a nice pile of salt sitting there.
He's got plenty of salt.
Yeah, so it doesn't need to go buy much.
Any,
And he made the point that it lasts forever. It's
Right,
not
it doesn't
gonna
go bad.
expire.
and he didn't
There's no
decrease his
expiration
budget,
date.
so they took it away.
We got through the year without needing any, right?
I think
There
they
was
did
some
it
sanding,
twice.
but
Once,
Yeah.
twice.
nothing like.
They used it an awful lot when they used it.
Spread it around.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, put another way, school is ending on the day that it's supposed to end this year. There were no snow days.
And that was pretty much what I had on the expense side. The budget was pretty tight. There was nothing that jumped out. I'll defer, I mean.
No, there wasn't.
I almost feel like I
when you
can't go
get
up
to
there.
salt,
Yeah,
pretty far down
to the road.
And that might be,
Literally the bottom of the barrel.
you know, I'll talk about the tires, right? Because the tires is always something every, what's that, a 3 or 4 year cycle. But on the expense side, it's tight.
which is stability, consistency, and good predictability.
Yep.
So.
And I mean, we always do this at some point, so I mean, I think this is a credit to Ed's good management. I think we are fortunate to have a quality public servant in Ed Gentile.
And I agree with that.
100%.
And you know,
Yeah.
the combination that the services I've observed over the years, not just in the short time I've been chair here, but going back a number of years, the services that are provided have been maintained, and in certain instances, like what's going on at the recycling center, have been expanded. The items, the differentiation on the types of items that get recycled, and the composting and all of that. You know, it's a clear expansion of services. So the services have expanded, the level of service has been maintained. The budget has been pretty steady and inside of, you know, operating increases in the broader operating budget, which is what the lead up was. We're not talking about the operating budget, and well within what the town escalation has been. And that's sort of the point I'll make. Just report the facts. With that, I mean, we could talk about capital. We could talk about capital now, and then we could vote on all of it. On the capital side, the sweeper was a victim of the Board of Selectmen. I think we saw that coming. It was, and you know, Public Works put some money into some refurb as he presented to us when he was here. I think that, I don't want to say it was a throwaway item. It needs to be, we need to have a sweeper, and it needs to be operational because of the state compliance that every street be swept at least once a year. It's a sediment that goes in. Yeah. I don't think there were any other casualties on the, I think that was it. That was it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, nothing, no other capital, no other major capital. I think the sweeper, it's just noting, it's a heads up that we're going to, that this is gonna need to be done.
Yep.
If not, you know, so, and Ed was very above board about that. It's that
Yep.
It increases our maintenance costs a little bit, but we need to do it within the next couple of years.
And I sort of took that as, yeah, it's probably going to increase our maintenance costs. We don't know what that's going to be until it happens. But going into the market and buying one now, you probably couldn't get one. I happen to be in the equipment business.
Oh.
You can't get much equipment. It's changing. But I don't know what the backlog is on a sweeper specifically, but I seem to think we should get moving on it if we're going to try to get one. I think that's, any other thoughts on capital? No? And then, let's see, we touched on sewer, we touched on parking. What else is on there we need to touch on?
Just to be clear, the road paving is not a capital item, right? So it doesn't form part of capital, it's part of operations, right?
Yes, it is.
And so it deferred the paving from the early part of the fiscal year until the end of the fiscal year now. So he's got we're just
You're
right now
referring-
finishing up the April round of paving.
We're going to cover that shortly.
Oh, sorry, am I out of order?
No, you're not out of order. You're accurate as it relates to the budget. I believe the lion's share, actually, I don't know if you want to touch on it, but the bulk of what was scheduled for last year,
Has
a
now
big
been
chunk of
done
it
in
was
April.
done.
Yeah.
I mean, my report is 10 seconds long. The
Would you?
the April paving has been completed now on schedule, and the August paving is scheduled for August, but they don't know what streets are going to be paved yet, and they'll probably publish that in a couple of months, she said, so much closer to the time. So what I have here is a list of what streets were paved, and I will hand them
Look at how
around.
long it is.
No pattern that I can discern all over town, 30 streets. And I'll just tell you, the experience from my own neighborhood was, they were very good. It was pretty fast, and the day they actually paved it, like, it's done and dry, and you can drive on it like almost
amazing.
immediately. It was remarkable. The one thing I laughed about is something that we have talked about in here. I had a neighbor come out the day it was done, and he said, "I sure wish I had known about this." Like, what are you talking about? There is a sign every 30 feet, and a neighbor sent around an email, and it was in all of the things that people don't get, but, you know, we had that conversation about how people get news. I don't know what you can do, because it was
Correct.
everywhere. But anyway.
You are right over by the middle school, that big bright orange sign flashing for 3 days.
Yeah.
I was stunned how fast they did it. I was stunned. They milled it one day.
Yeah, it was
Paved it the
very
next.
fast.
They do take a little bit of time to getting the lines on, when it's a yellow line or
Yeah.
whatever, but, I mean, that's fine, because they put down the dots for,
I mean, just look out here, when we all drove in.
Yeah.
I noticed it.
Yeah.
There's another one. When I went down Christie, I noticed that one. Yeah. So they did that quick. Anyway, so I think that's the entirety then of what they deferred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
yeah.
that was my only point, is that what is normally done in fiscal quarter one, calendar quarter three, like July, August last year, had deferred. It's all been done now in April, right, which is still the same fiscal year.
Still same year, yeah.
So, potato, we don't care,
Yeah.
and he may be doing another round in August if the prices are right.
Right.
And he said he
maybe,
got,
but
Well, he
like,
said
same
it
sort
was
of thing with.
cheaper, yeah, yeah.
however many.
Well, I mean, I assume that if the prices spike up again, that as we
Well, he
said-
may do the same exercise,
Yeah,
but,
we'll-
But
yeah.
I'm assuming if the
Yeah.
price is the same as it is now.
Okay.
they would
No,
It's-
no, those prices on the asphalt are set the day it's put on
Yeah.
the street.
Okay.
Yeah, that component, yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty volatile. But-
So there's a chance they'll defer if it's a,
Okay. And that could be a very last minute
Yeah,
decision.
I mean, I've not heard anything from Ed about that, but it just makes sense that if he pulled that card at the 11th hour last summer, he could do it this summer. And from the evidence he showed us a couple meetings ago, it saved us $80,000 to $100,000 by deferring it, so
so
I trust Ed's judgment that,
I suspect this group knows this, but just to hit the obvious, the number of miles that get paved is a function of what's been budgeted divided by the price at the time.
right.
It's not a predetermined
Right.
set of miles or streets. So that,
Makes sense.
Well, which was another, the same neighbor who said he wished he had known about it, was because he said, oh, then I would have asked the town to pave this little cul-de-sac part.
Right, right.
I didn't even
probably
get to
why
it,
the list is
but-
kept quiet.
Yeah,
Right there.
I think you're probably right, yeah. If everybody's asking for that, they're gonna
Just
run
this
out.
little bit more.
Yeah.
Right, but so Caroline, I think with no disrespect, I mean, as much as I had good things to say about Ed knows exactly what he's gonna do in August. He's just not.
I'm sure he does, but
telling
it's
us.
So
not
that
being
list-
published.
But it's not
The list that you had
published
in your
now.
hand was what was
That was
done.
April, that's what's
So the
being
list for
done.
August has not yet been.
Has not yet been
Yeah, he's
published.
not gonna release
And it will be
Yeah.
available
So
on
there's still a
September
chance
1st.
that-
Even
Yeah.
if, yeah, that list will come out very shortly
Pull
before
that
the
out
work is
some-
gonna be done.
Where'd you
Oh,
pull that
it
up?
was a press release.
It's
It
a
was,
press release,
it's
yeah,
on,
so
it's a town
it's on the
press
town hall
You- you-
website, but.
You know,
Yeah.
I will keep it. so
Yeah.
somebody
You can
else-
keep it.
Yeah.
And the only, my little note on the
Mike,
back is
sure,
because
you
I
can say
asked about the, you know, the turn signal and the sidewalk on West and Norotan.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's all still in process,
Mm-hmm.
so nothing has really happened there yet, but it's all
Well,
still.
they've got new poles up.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it,
They just need to actually
It just-
do the
The
street
turn
part
signal.
Yeah.
and then the line paint.
So I know that usually the paving is done in August because town seems to be pretty empty in August. But if Ed sees good prices in June or July, would he jump on that?
I'm gonna answer my opinion. I don't know for certain. I would expect if he's able to. He has the resources, he has, the roads are ready, taking them out offline works. I mean, there's a lot of variables that go
Yeah.
into it. But, yeah, I would expect that, and I don't think he's married to August. August is chosen because that's a slow period around here. But I would think, I know some roads are delayed or being done when certain construction projects around them are complete. I know that's what's going on. The sidewalk across from, what's it called, Darien Common, north side of the street, I guess it is. So sometimes it's contingent on things going on, or if, I know in the past he's historically paved a road after sewer work or storm drain work is done, or electrical. And so a lot of it is dictated by that, not just the strike price on the paving. So that's a qualified yes, as best I know. Before we move on then, can we vote on all of the operating, the capital, and the, let's do it separately.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen operating budget, capital budget, the parking operations fund, parking capital fund, and the sewer operations fund, and the sewer capital fund? And as it relates to the town, those items related to public works. Do you have a motion
I'd
to
like to
approve
make that
those
motion.
budgets?
I'll make that motion.
Frank and Jeff.
Yes. All in favor of the budgets as proposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Does that mean you'll step up at the RTM meeting and say the public works as approved?
I will, and my comments will be very specific to, we discussed and took action on the public works items specifically. And then they've asked me, as I said, to speak to how the capital and the operating funds are related for the parking and the sewer funds. So I'll bumble through that. Come on, Jack, that's your department. But I'll do it. All right, thank you for that. So the next item on the agenda, to stay in proper order, is the focus groups. And we've already touched on roadways, thank you very much. Other items to touch on include, let's see.
An update on the dump.
You want to go first?
The advisory on the sustainable.
Right, you're on Sustainability Committee, Advisory Committee, and also the recycling facility. I think you're on both. Do you have an update?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes,
Go
so
first.
I have an update from their March meeting. They met again in April on the 12th, and I'm not done listening to that one, but I have some notes from it. But basically, we get a lot of money coming in from the clothing machines, actually. We get paid 10 cents a pound. I didn't know that. So that's really helpful. We also get a lot of money coming in from the NIPS from the state. There's like, you know, those.
Yes. Fireballs.
We
What are
get
they?
Yeah.
when you know,
Tiny little
they put the
airline
state
liquor.
put a tax on those little
Oh.
tiny
The
things.
nips.
You see them on the
Yeah.
side of the road
Yeah,
all the
that's
time.
where
If
you
you go for a
fireball.
walk,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, buy those because we get
Do
money
they come
back
right
from the
back directly?
state.
It's a direct?
Yeah, I have
Everyone's looking at Frank.
You would. So yeah, there's a tax on
Why do you
it
know that,
from
Frank?
the state, and it
Frank,
comes
why
back
do
to
you
the
have
town, and so we get like about $3,000 a year, which is cool. Anyway, so yeah, since Stamford is closing their facility and we're gonna have to ship more trash elsewhere, they had like a, what's that called when you burn the trash?
Oh, the
Incinerator.
incinerator.
Thank you.
The wheel
We really need people to recycle their food scraps more, so I'm hoping, every time, I don't know, does anybody else bring
We
their
just
food
started
scraps?
doing
Every time I go, all of them are totally full, so people are using the food scrap bins, which is absolutely amazing. I think they're gonna have to increase it, I don't know, I mean, they're full every time I go. But the more we put in the food scraps, the less goes in the hopper, the less we have to pay to ship places to incinerate it.
In the
Yeah, and eventually there's not gonna be anybody in Connecticut incinerating, and we're gonna have to ship it out of state, so like, it's really important that we reduce the waste and find ways to do that. So they talked about like, you know, other towns in the area that have schools that are doing food scrap, collection and things like that. And then they had an Earth Day thing at Whole Foods. I did not go on the 22nd. So like letting people know they were collecting food scraps and whatnot there. Did anybody go? And they had a thing at the library too. So based on all the communication stuff, I did find they have like an Instagram page, the advisory committee.
The advisory committee,
does.
yeah.
At the recycling center, whatever you want to call it. It has like a couple hundred followers. It's not like blown up or anything. But give it a follow, give it a like, share with your friends. Get people recycling. And then the swap shop, yes, did reopen at the beginning of April. They revamped a few things, fixed a wall that was, you know, in disrepair and whatnot. They're working on what is that called? Like a letter that the volunteers will have to, like kind of a
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct. It's not finalized yet, but they worked on finalizing it in this last April meeting. And then it'll be posted, and hats and like yellow
Best.
for the people, the volunteers. And that was pretty much it.
All right, well, good.
So yeah,
Great.
Well, thank you.
that's all I got. Any questions about it?
Well, I
Or
went to
comments?
the
Oh, did you go to the
presentation they had
library
at the
thing?
library.
Couldn't make it.
And,
How was that?
I brought up the question about the food bins, if you will, and how I also experienced them to always be full.
Full. Yeah.
Full as in can't take any more type?
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you
Full.
flip up the lid and
It's
you're like, okay, not that one. And then you go to the next one and the next one, and
It's a little upsetting,
it's
yeah.
it's a problem,
Yeah.
and they were aware of the problem, but the answer that they gave me was, well, they have other bins, they're in the back. So what we suggest you do is get a hold of one of the people that's at the facility there and ask them to bring out,
the new bin.
you know,
Yep.
I mean,
bins that are not full, so we can
Okay.
continue to deposit our food there.
So it sounds like they're just not quite
fast.
in tune with,
Yeah.
Well, I just said to them, you know, if you're gonna try and encourage everybody in town to
Yeah.
bring in
Needs
the
to be a
food,
good
you know,
experience.
you've gotta,
Yeah.
you know, make it somewhat convenient.
well, that's something we
Ple-
could
a
do
little
for
more
there. We can call it,
pleasant.
now that we know, just call their attention to it.
Absolutely.
That's
a good
essentially
note.
what they were saying, just
Okay.
bring it to their attention.
Okay, it's not a, not having enough receptacles, it's literally just.
Right.
Well, and the other thing I've been doing is if any constituents complain to me about the mill rate going up or any of that, I ask them if they bring their food scraps to the dump. Because that's a way to reduce our costs that everyone can do, and it's not hard, you're going anyway, so
Well, any,
tell your friends.
Right, but that's not gonna offset 83 million.
What if every single person brought every single food
Every
scrap?
penny counts.
Think
We're
about
down to
it from that
82.9.
perspective.
It starts with one.
It's a rounding error.
It starts with one.
I'm all in favor of it. I think it's a great thing to do.
It's a great
All
thing to
respect for
do.
Carolyn Bain and the whole
Right.
team.
I'm just saying, people can't complain about one thing over here if they're not doing everything in their personal power to
Well,
lower.
There's a lot of things that have come out of the solid waste stream. The compost is just,
Yeah.
is the latest, I shouldn't say latest,
Exactly.
one that's topical right now, but the
Totally.
clothing,
The clothing is
cardboard,
huge,
the
and we
mixed-
get
the
money
mixed
for
was a
all that
single
clothing
stream.
too.
A
so-
lot of stuff
Yeah.
has been diverted away
Absolutely.
from, and the more you can do to reduce that solid waste, the better. Because, yeah, it does seem we're gonna have, we and many towns are gonna have an issue if that
Absolutely.
incinerator shuts down.
that Bridgeport incinerator, which is where anything that from our town gets incinerated, it's there at Bridgeport. That was built in the 80s, and it's definitely got a clock on it, that's for sure. And it's not going to be renewed, I don't think, when the time comes. And that's what happened in West Hartford, or Hartford rather. There was an incinerator there, and it was just too costly to run, and they didn't want to put the money in it to upgrade it in any way, and so they just shut it down. But they didn't have a plan B. And so many of the surrounding towns in that area were basically like, huh? They had to scramble with all of their waste. And yeah, a lot of it is being transported out of state, as far as Ohio.
And is that done on a town-by-town basis, Rolf?
It is.
Like each town has to figure out how to ship its stuff to Ohio?
Yeah,
Or
from
is
what I've
that
read,
Done in a see, that would be like, it seems like a West Cog opportunity to say, we as a
Yeah,
region have a.
I think
waste
West
issue.
Cog, certainly I would love to see them get involved. I think the state has to get involved,
100%.
okay? Because, there are numerous incinerators that are still in operation, but one by one, they're gonna fall. And they have to have some sort of a plan.
So it seems like it's, yeah, I mean, again, it's far afield from the budget, so I'm glad to stop here, but I mean,
Right. And
this
just
seems like an opportunity for the state to.
a reminder that if anyone complains about the swap shop, everything at the swap shop that doesn't get taken by somebody else goes in the hopper, and then we have to incinerate that
Yep,
too.
great.
The whole point of
End of the
it
day.
Just to keep
is
it up.
it's not a moneymaker, it's just for people to reuse
It's a money saver.
It's
Yeah,
a money
perfect. To reduce
saver.
reduce volume
So
in
any
the hopper.
constituents that wanna get all bent out of shape about it, it's saving us money too,
It
so
is.
they need to chill,
That's a good point.
yeah.
Other focus areas, flooding. Any-
I can talk about that if you want.
You got
So,
anything?
well, you sent us the note, so there was, as Rolf read last time, the Salt Box Lane
Yeah.
flooding, evaluation. And based on that, there was some correspondence sent to us and the first selectman from the folks on Seagate Lane, which is downstream from Salt Box. And so they're a little concerned about, if you do a bunch of remediation upstream from us, all that comes to us, then what, right? And so they had a set of specific questions around, a lot of it was, can we get the numbers and the, from the study and the details. And then I guess that pipe ends in Holly Pond. And in particular, at high tide, that the output of that pipe is underwater. And so they're like, well, then what happens? So two scenarios. When it's underwater, that obviously fills up some capacity, so what are you gonna do about that? And when it's not underwater, if you push more water through that pipe and it comes out at force, it's taking a bunch of sediment with it. What happens when that hits Holly Pond? What are you doing to Holly Pond, basically, was sort of their question. And then asking about, if you do the project itself will kick off a bunch of sediment. How are you gonna catch that? Or are you just gonna throw that into Holly Pond? And those were the main points in there that I took.
And presumably those would be questions that are be forwarded and could be fielded at that public hearing
Yeah.
that's coming up.
Oh, yeah,
The 11th.
there is a
Yeah.
Seagate Housing Association.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sure they're going to be there.
That's who wrote this
Yeah.
up.
And they were not included or consulted in this process at any point prior to the plan being developed, I guess. That's the way I read it anyway.
Even though they volunteered to be consulted in materials and videos
Yeah.
Made themselves available.
and they clearly wanted to be consulted and they were not.
Thank you for that. And anything else on flooding? Somewhat related to flooding, Rolf, I know you were invited to do a community matters piece.
Yes, after the RTM meeting, and I put out reiterated, if you will, about the announcement of the May 11th meeting. A couple of days later, I got a call from Jim Cameron, TV 79. And so he wants to put together a public service announcement to go on TV 79 about the meeting. And of course, he wants to get that done. In fact, he wants to work with me next week to do a recording as essentially a public service announcement. It'll be very similar to what I presented at the RTM, except I'll also augment it with some photographs of what happened, the flooding and that sort of thing. And he's going to transmit it so that we can hopefully raise further awareness about this meeting on the 11th, and so that people can have an opportunity to come. The invitation was clear to say that, it's about the Salt Box area, but in addition, it said that they would be open for public questions and comment. Okay, so that does leave the door open for people to speak more than just about the Salt Box project per se. But yeah, it's going to be, I'll be there, so it's gonna be an interesting meeting to see what happens.
What time is that meeting again?
Yeah, so-
7 o'clock,
Thank you.
Okay. thank
right
you.
here,
So-
Town Hall.
So make sure to take
auditorium.
your public service announcement and tag it to the transfer station Instagram account. That'll get rid of
Okay, okay.
So raising awareness,
Mhm.
obviously is helpful. Sometimes folks don't pay attention to stuff like that unless they realize it's their neighborhood or their
Was it May
downstream.
11th, Robin?
Yeah.
May 11th, I believe that's a Thursday,
It
7
is.
o'clock,
Yeah.
Town Hall auditorium.
When you give your PSA, just make sure you get your hair and makeup done.
All right, all right. Well, actually, I put together a PowerPoint, and so I don't think my face is really gonna be on the tube that much. It's gonna be more just talking through what's in the PowerPoint, and it's about 13 screens. It's not a long, drawn-out thing, but I take a little step back in time to remind people about the storms, when they hit, how much rain fell, which was a lot, and all of the problems that came from that.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Flooding,
Look forward to
flooding.
seeing it on Channel 79.
Well, you know, I think Tuesday, I think we're gonna get
Or
together.
hearing you if you're
Yeah.
just
Not
narrating,
seeing.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's more a
Disembodied
narration
voice
with.
I'm gonna do voiceovers.
Right, so we
Yeah.
did the flooding, we did the roads, Great Island. I got a couple of things on Great Island. Anyone have any thoughts before I?
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Do we know
Be careful
who
what you ask
the at-large citizens are?
That's what I wanted to make sure we
Oh.
publicize
Do we
is
know?
that, no, they're still taking
Oh.
Applications.
Yeah.
applications.
Okay.
I know, Vinnie, you had a question. Was that helpful?
Well,
when it's
the GMA, you know, Charles asked me, how does one get into this? So I forwarded him a PDF of all of it.
So it is still open.
Okay.
I'm not sure when they're considering it. I know they want to try to get it.
Done
I
pretty
think it's
soon.
open until this Sunday, the 30th.
I don't know if it's this tomorrow or through Sunday. Okay.
And are they interviewing and?
That's what they're going to do.
Yeah, they will be
once they-
conducting interviews.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's very formal, all right.
The
So-
application's on, if you go online, like one of the,
Yep,
on the
it's online.
homepage,
I went and
it's,
looked.
it'll take you to the link to the Great Island information page, and then there's an application there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I did. I went and
Yeah.
looked just to see what it was all about
Yeah.
before I.
Yeah. I read through the questions.
Went too far.
You know, it's just basic,
Mhm. Like
what's your
What
background?
qualifies you?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the political affiliation, because they need to have the
Keep
right numbers
it,
there.
yeah.
But you think the limit, in order for somebody to, I only told Charles yesterday, or this morning, actually. This morning I forwarded it, so if somebody filled it out, would they be in time? The
Yeah.
town hall is closed tomorrow.
No, but I'm sure if you email it in,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it'll,
get it in.
I think
there's a
more
date on
than-
the email, as long as it's
Yeah.
by the 30th, I'm sure they'll still
Uh-huh.
take it
Okay.
into consideration.
I'm gonna guess if he gave it in on Monday, it's
Yeah, I
probably
think
still.
it's probably
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
Okay, thank you for that. And then
I'll just,
anything to add? I'm sorry.
yeah, I actually went onto the Instagram account for the town, and it's advertised there.
Oh,
Or at least the Great Island information is advertised there, so they're communicating, but
Trying to get it out a little
Yeah.
bit. Okay, that's important. I mean, anything we can do
Absolutely.
to get it out to organizations that might be interested or people that we think would add value,
Great.
et cetera. And then I wanted to just mention, at the Board of Selectmen meeting, I don't know if it was the last one, I think it was the last one, they reactivated the ARPA Advisory Committee.
Mhm.
Rolf, were you going to talk about this? I'm sorry.
Well, I can.
Yeah, I had it on here, I didn't have, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it was, I don't know, several RTM meetings back, it came up, Kate, the town administrator, said that, you know, with the calendar moving along, there are certain deadlines for the ARPA funding. And so she was concerned that there were, in particular, two projects, and of course, they are drainage projects. The salt box project is one, and of course, the other one is for Tilly Pond watershed. And those come to a total of about 2.5 million. But the salt box analysis, as it's being recommended, is far greater in terms of money's cost than what was earmarked in the ARPA fund. ARPA fund was, for that project was 1.5 million. The recommendation from Ty and Bond is coming in over 6 million. So from the money aspect and also from a time viewpoint, she raised the question, and I think deservedly so, that the listing of the ARPA funding should be re-examined, and so that led the Board of Selectmen to vote to do just that, is to reconstitute the ARPA committee. Several members who were participants in the past are no longer available, so they're going to have to refill some of the spots on the committee.
On that role, if I recall, was the Board of Finance,
That's one of them, yeah.
And was it RTM?
You know, I don't know.
I think it was someone from RTM, F&B.
Okay.
I
Okay,
think
finance and
Jack-
budget, okay.
Yeah, so I think Jack was gonna
Come up with
offer up
a
someone else.
recommendation.
But I think it's, I don't want to go ahead, finish up.
Well, just that, once they have that reconstituted, they're gonna meet and they're gonna go over the list again. And so there's a very good possibility that these will be pulled off the list. Should I go ahead about my contact with Ed?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
all
just
right,
interject
all right.
though,
So,
to where you're going with that, Rolf.
I-
I think as this reconstitutes, it's very important that, you know, the flooding, folks from this committee pay very close attention, participate where we can, because things will be, gonna be shifting. And
yeah, my concern about the projects that are on the list now being taken off is, well, then what happens to those projects? Okay, do they just, you know, go into oblivion, or what's gonna happen? Because now you're talking about having to finance, if we go ahead at 6 million, that then has to be financed through, you know, taxes. It's not gonna come from ARPA. You know, I took the initiative to contact Ed Gentile and asked him, you know, if he had any projects in the hopper that are more close at hand that could be a substitute if those projects are pulled off the list. And he does have things related to phase 2 of the sewer project, the Arcadis sewer project. And he's going to be going out bidding in the near future. So that's a more, as they like to say, shovel-ready type of project that could be inserted in lieu of the other two. But that's something that the committee's going to have to meet and decide upon. I would certainly like to influence that, because I think certainly it works well, because that's an ongoing project. That project is earmarked to go for even years beyond what Ed's got in phase 2. It qualifies within the ARPA parameters, and it is something that he's apparently very close to that could be done within the time frame. So to me, it all works. So we just need, I think we just need to follow through to try and influence it, that could be considered
Rolf,
seriously.
which project is this? I don't recognize the name.
Well, Arcadis is the consultant, you know, Frank can
Okay.
probably speak to this much better than I can. But we've been working with them now for I don't know how many years. It's got to be at least two years, maybe 3, something like that. When we engaged with them, it was an approved by the RTM for them to basically conduct inspection of our sewer system.
Right.
We have 80 miles of sewer. It's not been all clearly identified in terms of its exact location, so that's part of what they're doing. And they're also doing camera inspections to see the conditions of the pipes.
Got it.
We have some
It's
very
all-
serious.
I'm going after I&I.
Yeah, that's what they're
No,
after.
I got it. I
is the
just wasn't
I&I.
recognizing
They want to
the name.
reduce the inflow and infiltration.
And they broke it up into
I
4
think,
phases or
yeah,
6
there's at least
phases?
3 that I know of, and there might be a
And they were
fourth.
So it's-
prioritized, that's what the
Yeah,
phases are.
and then,
Yeah.
well,
4
they
phases.
inspect and then.
Then they put together a
attack the
plan.
immediate stuff.
Right.
And
Yep.
then structural stuff after that. So it's
Yep.
kind of like on sequence to go through the entire thing. So it's
Yeah.
a long, I don't know what the total length of it is, but it's a 10-year plus
Yeah,
project.
I think it's about a total of 10 years that takes it all the way out to 4 phases. But just
Thank-
another note about how I think that would work well with the changes that I think are going to occur is that we've already done a project that was covered in ARPA. We had 3,500 feet of pipe on Old Kings Highway South. That was relined, manhole covers were refurbished or replaced if necessary, and that all was covered under ARPA, and that was $1 million. Okay, so we know that that type of project already works well because we did it. Okay, so this would just be carrying it to the
Yep.
next phase.
All right, so you'll be following that?
I'd like to, yes.
Yeah, please do. And as it becomes clear what, if any of those projects are gonna, can't or not get done because of size or timing, let's be clear from Ed which ones are shovel-ready and could possibly be.
Yeah, I think I'd like to attend those, at least the startup meetings of this reconstituted ARP
They're all
committee.
public meetings, right?
Yeah, they are public, so it'd be interesting to see how they reinitiate that review.
Thank you for that. As far as the focus groups, that's all I had. Is there anyone who has a report that I didn't cover? No?
Well, I watched the coastal waters.
Did you ever go to that committee, the one that you and I went to that never showed up?
Well, yeah, well, it first met just at the RTM last Monday, a half hour before our RTM meeting, so I couldn't personally attend or whatever, but
This is coastal.
the town is pretty much,
Coastal advisory.
the town is pretty much asked them to advise on Great Island. There's a lot of there'll be a lot of Coastal Water Commission
Advise or?
advising
Advise.
on Great Island. That's the
Yep.
gist
Okay.
of the, it was the first meeting that, who's president and who's,
Yeah.
chairman and all that organizing stuff as well.
Do you recall who was in fact voted as chair?
Well, it's the interim chair, the interim, they voted to keep
Bill?
Bill.
Cabers?
Cabers?
And for,
So he's gonna
for a few.
carry
for-
on.
For a few months while they, then.
Okay.
Why is he
and then-
interim? He doesn't want to be long-term?
Well, he's been there a while, and I think he.
I had
wants to
contact
thaw
with
out.
him at one point because I was, going, had applied to get on that, which I didn't. But he had expressed to me that he had an interest to step down from the chairmanship so he could focus more on environmental related matters for the Coastal Advisory Committee. Okay, so he could focus on the environmental impacts to the coastline.
Got it. Okay. Anything else we need to or want to consider? I'll take a motion to adjourn. Paige, Ian. I thank you all for your participation this evening.